Hello there, this is Ty the Movie Guy, and I just finished watching the season finale of Loki Season 2. And today we're going to talk all about Season 2 of Loki and whether or not it's as good as the first season or is it just super confusing. First off, I want to talk about some of these standout characters of this season, and we gotta talk about Obi, played by Ki-Hye Kwan. He's easily my favorite character of this season, mainly because I love Temple of Doom so much, and it's just so nostalgic to me, and it's like one of my favorite movies of all time. And so of course I love Short Round in that movie. He's just so cute and funny and wholesome.
Okie dokie, Dr. Jones, hold on to your potatoes.
He does that portrayal in basically everything he does, like Everything Everywhere All at Once last year, and I'm so glad he won an Oscar for that. And I want him to be in so many more movies, and I want him to be the lead of a movie. I want more of Ki, and we definitely got that in this show. And yeah, like I said, he's just funny, cute, and charming in like everything he does, and once again, he especially was in this show. So I loved him in this show, of course, and maybe even my favorite aspect of this season, honestly. And then also the characters I want to mention are Mobius and of course our title character Loki. And just like season 1, they have great chemistry together. I love they kind of give off like detective cop vibes, just working cases together and stuff like that. I just really love them working together. And Owen Wilson is a really great actor, and then of course Tom Hiddleston's a really great actor. And then of course we just gotta talk about Loki in general, especially episode 5 and 6 of season 2. He just got more and more powerful. It is crazy how powerful he has become. Like episode 5, he started to learn time travel, and I'm like, whoa, geez, he knows time travel. That's a big thing. And then episode 6, they kicked it up even more. Spoilers if you haven't seen it, of course. I'm assuming you have, but in episode 6, the stuff he did and how powerful he has become was absolutely crazy. And considering he's a character all the way back from phase 1 of the MCU, I really like seeing him this powerful. Like, we've seen him for over like 10 years, so he deserves this power. Like, we've seen him over and over again, and we've seen his struggle and how many times he's failed and everything. So like, the more we've been with this character, the more he deserves this moment, if that makes sense. Just giving a brief summary of the whole season, I felt 1 and 2 were kind of just boring and forgettable, honestly. Especially number 1, because in season 1 it ended on this big cliffhanger of like Mobius didn't know who Loki was, and there was like a big Kang statue in the TVA. So me personally, I thought this was like a different multiverse, because He Who Remains was talking all about his different Kangs and everything. So I thought, oh, okay, this is probably a different multiverse with Kang as the leader. And it's kind of like that, where Kang was the leader, but that was because it's not a different multiverse. It's the past of the TVA, and that's why Mobius didn't know Loki, which is also kind of interesting, but not when that whole episode is basically reversing the time slipping that they set up in season 1. So it kind of feels like they wanted a cliffhanger, and then as they got to season 2, they're like, oh crap, we dug ourselves in a hole. Now we gotta spend a whole episode like fixing what we did. At least to me, that's how I felt. And then episode 4 and 5 were just really confusing. Like super confusing to me, at least. I think a lot of other people are really confused. They're just so confusing. I'm gonna talk about all like the confusing stuff later, because that's one of the big problems of this season. But then number 3 and number 6 were definitely the best episodes, because number 3 was the 1800s episode that first introduced Victor Timely and everything, and it was like the carnival. And I liked it because I just like seeing different time periods, and I feel like that was kind of lacking in this season compared to number 1 to me. I don't remember number 1 too well, but I just remember like cool time periods like Pompeii, and that's all that really comes to mind. But I found that more interesting than this season. This season only really had the 1800s episode, and then there was like a couple scenes in like the 1900s and stuff like that, but 1800s was really about it. And then episode 6 was of course great because that's the finale, so you know, either they really blow your mind or they don't, like Secret Invasion. But this one was really crazy and really detrimental to all of the MCU now. And like I mentioned earlier, Loki is just crazy powerful now, which is really cool to see, honestly. Like I said, he's a long-time MCU character, so just seeing him with this power is amazing. And then also at the start of episode 6, I really liked the scene where he's first learning his time travel powers and like keeps redoing things over and over again, and he gets better and better, and everyone's like, how do you know all this stuff? And it really reminded me of Doctor Strange, of course, the scene at the end of Doctor Strange.
Dormammu, I've come to bargain.
1 and 2 were kind of boring. 4 and 5 were really confusing, and then 3 and 6 were really solid. And so, like I said, 4 and 5 are really confusing, but so is the whole season, and that's my big problem with the whole season. I just have like so many questions, and the big problem with that is I'm confused, but I don't really know what I'm confused about. I wrote down a couple things, like the main things that I'm confused about. I just wrote YTVA and Loom, but basically what I'm trying to say is in episode 6, Loki obviously destroys the Loom because the Loom is the thing keeping the timeline in order. But if the Loom is keeping the timeline in order, then what's the point of like the TVA going to different time periods and pruning people? So like, why are they doing the same thing basically? If you have an answer, please comment it, because I'm really confused. Like, do you really need a Loom and the TVA going around pruning people, or can't just the Loom do everything? And then also, just the Kang situation is really confusing, especially because Jonathan Majors might get fired and they might just go to Doctor Doom instead. I would honestly hate that. I know Jonathan Majors doesn't sound like a great guy, but like they've dug themselves too deep. You have to keep going with this guy to make the whole saga like cohesive-ish. Like it already isn't that cohesive, but you know, work with what you got, please, I beg you. But just like the whole Kang thing is just so confusing. Like, is Victor Timely he who remains from the past, or a different version of him? Or like, does he who remain, was he like never really, he obviously was on the timeline at one point, but did he like take himself off the timeline, and now before like all the branches broke off, there was like no Kangs in the timeline besides him in the end of time? Like, I really don't get the Kang situation. And then also, my little theory about all these branches and everything, I always thought like it was kind of weird how in No Way Home it was so magic-y with Doctor Strange, and then in Loki they kind of like did their own thing. But now I'm trying to see like how it all ties together. And personally, my theory is like the stuff with like Toby and Andrew, their universes, and like the X-Men universe and the Fantastic Four universe and Ghost Rider and Blade, all like the early 2000s movies that aren't MCU. I'm guessing, my theory is they're branches from the timeline that like broke off because of like what happened just now. But we obviously like don't think that because, you know, they're before the MCU, so we kind of think they were always there. but they technically weren't because they were kind of just created because of the branches, if that makes sense. Like, it's kind of like the Flash where if you change something here, it also changes something in the past, like the spaghetti thing. So I guess breaking the branches and having all these different branches and everything, like it happened like now currently in the past couple of years with the whole multiverse thing, but like it's kind of already happened with all the non-MCU stuff, if that makes sense. It's really, really confusing, and that's my whole problem with this season. It really put like stuff like the Endgame time travel that was confusing at the time, and like Christopher Nolan movies, it put that to shame. Like, this is just mind-bogglingly confusing. And yeah, that's just my major problem with this season. Like, I want to like it. There's like really cool scenes, like Loki grabbing branches and like putting it together, and now he's just this, well, he's always been a god, but he's a god, like the god. And I love to see that. And I just want to like all this stuff, but I can't process it. So I think over time, I will like it more once I finally figure out what went on. But just for now, I'm just pretty confused. And I definitely think season 1 is better just because it was way more simple and everything. But yeah, this one was good. I'd say I'd give it like a 7 out of 10. Hopefully that goes up when I figure out what I just watched. But yeah, tell me what you thought of this season, and farewell.